Hi guys, I'm Aidan from GTG. Today I want to talk about loading and different ways that you can load exercises and kind of discuss why you want to load, kind of cover that topic in general. So basically the point behind loading the body, loading an exercise is to force an adaptation. So really increasing stress and demand on the body and therefore forcing an adaptation from the body. That's probably the easiest way to put it. I've got a series of ways that we can try and do this. I'm going to really just discuss them and try and make sense of them and lay them out fairly logically, just to help people when it comes to how exactly you choose or determine to load an exercise, when and why and how. So the most easiest way of looking at this is through something called progressive overload. So essentially progressively loading or overloading the body to force an adaptation or to force stress and demand on the body that will eventually cause an adaptation. What we're going to talk about first off is linear progression. So basically linear progression is the idea of starting off an exercise and every single week just adding weight to the bar. So let's just say it was a deadlift. Every single week you'd be trying to add more weight to that bar and perform the same number of sets and reps. So if you're doing something like a 5x5 program with the deadlift, and maybe you're starting on 60 kilos, and then every single week you're trying to add load to that bar and continue that 5x5 protocol sets and reps. And the idea behind that is you're trying to make very small incremental jumps. The bigger the jump, usually the quicker you're going to run into a sticking point where you're going to stall. So we're kind of aiming for something like 2.5 to 5 kilos per week, or something like 2.5 to 5% increase if maybe 2.5 to 5 kilos is actually quite a big jump for you. So if you're using 10 kilos, adding 2.5 to 5 kilos on top of 10 kilos is quite a large jump. It's a 25 to 50% increase. It's quite a lot. So at that point, you're looking more towards a percentage increase. We'll talk about that a wee bit more later on, because with things that have such a low loading or maybe threshold to begin with, you probably want to employ a different strategy, but we'll come back to that. So most of the time, linear progression is something that will start with beginners, okay? And they'll be able to just continuously add weight to the bar every single week for quite a long period of time, and they'll progressively overload. You're going to get to a point where essentially you can't continue to make progress, okay? If you were able to add 2.5 to 5 kilos per week or even per session with beginners most of the time, every single session or every single week, you would become the world's strongest man within a very short period of time. So obviously, logically speaking, it's going to get to a stage where this doesn't happen anymore. Now, this can be used past beginner stage. If you can recycle, you can get to a point where you kind of run out of room, and then you do something called a deload, which we'll talk about at the end, and then go back to a lighter load and start again and start working your way up. So it's almost like taking one step back to take two forward, and you can do that for a long period of time. Eventually, what tends to happen is people usually begin to struggle with rest and recovery on something like this and need a slightly more advanced protocol, or maybe just in terms of if you want to try different methodologies, because they get relatively bored with this over time, it usually changes. But that's your kind of fundamental principle, and that's fundamentally what you're aiming for. To think about, regular and constant progress and small incremental jumps. Okay, trying to avoid big jumps. The next thing which would come would be something like a percentage-based program. So what this really means is you would take someone with 1 rep max. So again, let's take a deadlift. Let's say they could do a 1 rep max of 200 kilos. You would record that and then use percentages to work out what they should be lifting in the program. So there's quite a lot of research done on this. I think the most popular table of research is called Philippines table, which basically shows you that how many reps you should be able to lift at a percentage of that 1 rep max. So for instance, you should be able to do 10 reps for 75% of your 1 rep max. If you have a 200 kilo 1 rep max, that means 154 kilos for 10 reps. And that's usually pretty reliable, especially within intermediates. It begins to flag slightly when it comes to more advanced lifters or more advanced trainees and women, because a lot of the times what their 1 rep max is isn't a great indication of what they can do for repetitions, and usually women can do an awful lot more. So it's not a fantastic predictor. Also, it's based on the fact that you know what that person's 1 rep max is, and sometimes, given certain circumstances, that's maybe not very viable to be able to test that. It's maybe not safe. You can try doing a 3 rep max and predicting off of that, but sometimes just going down that route, especially in a setting that we have, it's just unnecessarily complicated. So a good way to go after that would be something like rate of perceived exertion or reps in reserve. And I've written here that that's for intermediate plus. Okay, so there's a good body of research in this, especially more presently, which the idea behind RPE and reps in reserve is how many reps could you do once you've hit your target. So for instance, if you were going for a set of 8 repetitions, once you hit that, how many more reps could you do? So if you had something like reps on reserve of 2 reps in reserve, and you were going for a set of 8 repetitions, 2 reps in reserve would mean you could probably do 2 more. So that'd be something like your 10 rep max, but you do 8 repetitions with it. And RPE, rate of perceived exertion, is actually the same idea. It's just looked at a different way. It's measured on a scale of 1 to 10, and an 8.5 on an RPE scale would be the same as 2 reps in reserve. Okay, they're literally the same idea. For people who are pretty experienced within weight training and within strength-based training, this is very reliable. And the research has shown it's extremely reliable and correlates very well with percentage-based training. So that person who has a good idea of what exactly they can lift can come in, look at whatever the target is. So let's say 2 reps in reserve, knew that they need to do a set of 8, and have a good idea of what that would look like. They know what they could do for 10 reps, and then they aim for 8. And they build it that weekly. So basically it goes from 1 rep in reserve, or 2 reps to 1 rep to 2 reps, and that's how you can scale that one. And that's how they go together. It still follows the same principle of progressive overload, but it's a lot more adaptable, and this is a lot when we try and use a PTG, because it allows for changes in weekly fatigue and recovery. 1 week you might come in and you can feel like an absolute beast, and you can basically do the lift quite a lot, and maybe you've had a lot of work and life stress, and the next week you're pretty fatigued, and the idea of doing the exact same load and maybe trying to add to that, it's just not feasible. You need to work more on the RP scale. But it's a lot, again, we're still trying to follow that idea of progressive overload. Okay, so overall, when we're talking about these kind of areas, progressive overload, we're talking about affecting the intensity. So essentially, increasing the load is known as affecting the intensity. But there are other ways of creating progressive overload. So we've got volume, and trying to affect volume through sets and reps. And basically what we do within sets and reps is trying to either increase sets or increase reps within there, okay, to affect the volume. Now what volume is basically sets times reps times load. Okay, so essentially if you are doing, say, 100 kilos of a deadlift for 10 reps, okay, that would be 10 times 100, which would be 1,000. Okay, if you did that for 10 sets, then you'd be talking about 10,000 kilos lifted, which is known as the total volume. Okay, it's basically just a principle that's worthwhile knowing, and it's actually a really good indicator of muscle mass. So increasing volume is a really good predictor of increase in muscle mass. But basically, if you kept the load the same and you tried to affect the sets and the reps by either doing more sets per session or increasing the reps, you would increase the volume and you would cause progressive overload based on the increase in stress and demand in the body. So what I've done here is drawn a lovely wee pyramid to try and indicate what exactly you're trying to do here and what the difference is. So if we have at the base of the pyramid, what is volume? Okay, so essentially your sets times your reps times your load. As you increase the intensity, so increase the load, this begins to narrow. So they can't go increase at the same time. You can't just keep, once you get pretty much past beginner, you can't just keep increasing the intensity and increasing the amount of sets and reps you do. I think if you put them together, it's inversely correlated. So as one goes up, the other one needs to come down, and vice versa. Okay, so what you try and do through this principle is basically build a really, really big base, and then from there, gradually try and increase the intensity and take down that overall volume. But by building a big base of volume at the very beginning, the higher that peak in that pyramid is. Okay, so that's how you kind of work that in. The next thing to mention at the bottom, which you don't want to spend an awful lot of time on, is various methods of increasing stress in the body without particularly focusing on increasing intensity, okay, or increasing load. As you can see, my writing got progressively worse as we got down the whiteboard, so apologies for that. So basically, the next thing that I've written here, which I don't want to spend too much time on because it's maybe make things confusing, is other ways to stress the body. Okay, so affecting rest. So basically, more rest means more recovery between sets, which means energy levels are going to get higher essentially. Energy systems are going to recover, and you can probably lift more load and more reps. And decrease in rest will make that have the opposite reaction, but can increase work capacity. So what we use sometimes, and what's very good, is use something called density. So taking a specific period of time, say 15 minutes, trying to do a certain amount of sets and reps in there, and then trying to increase that. So you're going from maybe 3 sets to 5 sets within that small period of time, and you will still get an increase in demand. You'll still get a form of progressive overload. And as soon as you step away from that and you take those sets back down and you increase the recovery, you'll usually see that person can do a greater weight. The next thing we talk about then is tempo. So essentially trying to control the speed of the lift, or else pausing. So pausing, let's say, pausing halfway up on the deadlift from the floor, that's a form of stress in the body. Your body only perceives that as stress. Like it has to work at a certain level of intensity. Okay, it's not, body isn't exactly going to recognize how much weight is in the bar, just basically how much stress is being put upon that. So pausing is another way of doing that, or affecting the tempo. The next thing is range of motion, which usually isn't talked about too much. So a good comparison I've written here is a hip thrust versus a glute bridge. So a glute bridge you can usually do quite a lot of weight on, and usually more than you can do in a hip thrust. But a hip thrust has a greater range of motion. The same as maybe something like an elevated deadlift versus a deadlift from the floor. You're probably going to do more weight on an elevated deadlift than you could do from a deadlift from the floor. But that effort, that perceived effort by your body is going to be maybe relatively similar given the range of motion and increase in range of motion. So that's something to consider. Basically overall then, the main focus is the fact that increasing stress and demand in the body will eventually cause fatigue. Okay? Fatigue, and therefore fatigue requires recovery. Okay? And what this is known as is just compensation or super compensation. So you can't just continuously progressively overload past being a beginner. You can't just continuously load your body. At some point you have to go through a recovery phase. What we use is a 3-to-1 ratio, something I would recommend. So 3 weeks of loading or 6 weeks of loading plus a 1 week of recovery known as a deload, or 2 weeks of recovery with the other option known as a deload. What we're looking to do is try and affect the overall volume. Okay, so trying to take it down to 60% of what you were doing previously. So if we remember that we touched on previous what volume is, it's sets times reps times load. You're essentially trying to affect one of those in terms of decreasing the volume. So you can maybe take the load down and perform similar sets and reps, or you can take the sets and reps down and keep the load high or the intensity high, or you can affect all of them, or you can change up the exercises. There's actually several ways that you can do a deload. The important thing to know about it is that it is required to allow the body to recover, supercompensate, and cause an adaptation. Okay, so without that, you basically just continuously stress and place demand on the body. It continuously just gets fatigued, and then over time, people begin to overtrain or crash and stop making progress, which is the basis behind a deload. So when it comes to loading, how you load, why you would load, the principles behind that, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Okay, thanks.